I don't know if I'm in frame or not, but hopefully. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about the Black Panther movie, and I really liked it. I should say that off the bat. I did have a lot of problems with it though. The reviews and the expectations were really high. It got an 87 on Metacritic and it had like 100 on Rotten Tomatoes. And I wanted to see what it was about, and I was like, whoa, wow, is this really better than The Dark Knight, Spider-Man 2? And it turns out, no. It's not better than The Dark Knight. It's not better than Spider-Man 2. It's not even better than Spider-Man or Captain America Winter Soldier. So I liked it though, and if I had to give it a rating, I would say it would be like 7. It's still good. I really enjoyed it. A lot of the acting was strong. The performances, I like the characters. You know, it's a really strong supporting cast. The villain was good. He actually had motivation this time, which you know, Marvel has always been criticized for that, but this time they actually did get a good one. I wouldn't call him the best villain ever. When I saw the trailer and I saw Michael B. Jordan acting, I was worried, and I was also worried when the movie started, when he got introduced. Like, he looked like he was kind of hamming it up a little, which he kind of does throughout the whole thing. Like, he talks and acts a certain way when he's walking, like kind of towards away from the camera in a scene. He's kind of doing this, like, oh, I'm badass, I'm a bad guy, oh yes, oh, and little choices like that kind of kept me from being totally like, oh, this great performance, oh my goodness. But overall, I felt it was good. There's this scene, and he kind of takes like this little spiritual journey. He meets his dad's spirit, and it's actually quite moving. You know, where he's walking in, and you know, he's doing his bad guy walk, and then he turns into a kid all of a sudden, talking to his dad, and I'm like, whoa. And then later on, before the scene ends, he turns back into his present self, and there's just this subtlety that Michael B. Jordan gave it. I don't know if it was the direction or they were choices made by him, but a lot of the time I did feel like he was kind of overacting at times and stuff. But there's always, especially because of that scene, there's this little underlying subtle thing about his performance that I really liked. I liked Andy Serkis in this. He plays, was it Claw, the arms dealer, the arms dealer, and he's very entertaining in this. If anything, they don't show enough of him. I was kind of disappointed by the direction they took his character. The direction they took his character in, but overall he was very entertaining. And I don't know, maybe they'll bring him back somehow. But yeah, even though he's not in the rest of, he's only, the arms dealer is only there until half of the movie, about a little bit less than half actually. And he disappears. But Warmonger was a pretty good villain, I think. You know, he had this charisma about him. I didn't really like a lot of the action scenes. I thought the opening was okay. I didn't really like the action scene where Michael B. Jordan's character is introduced. I actually did like the little casino club fight. It was good, and the SUV chase after it. I like the midpoint ritual fight with Warmonger and the Julu. Was that his name? Julu Cthulhu. With Black Panther and Warmonger, the midpoint fight scene. I liked it. It actually had some emotion to it, some weight. It was ruined by, I wouldn't say ruined, but there was this little moment that I didn't like with Forrest Whitaker's character. That it was not dumb, but I just thought it was lame. I actually like the humor in this. There's a lot of people who say they have problems with it, but I liked it. I've heard a lot of people that they think it's lame and it's not funny, but I thought it was funny. Certainly my theater thought it was funny, the audience in my theater. And everybody complains about, I've heard people complaining about the what are those joke, and I actually did cringe. Everybody else laughed, or well, I don't know how many, like a pretty sizable portion of the theater laughed, but I cringed and I was like, oh no. The character who says it is actually Black Panther's little sister, who's a genius apparently. She says, but what are those? Making fun of his sandals and you know, and it's an outdated meme, but also supposedly this is supposed to take place right after Civil War. So right after Civil War, so I guess it'd be timely. I never liked that meme. I always cringed ever since its introduction, but and I think even by Civil War it was outdated, wasn't it? I don't know if it's part of her character or the writers or whoever actually did want to make an actual reference to that meme to be relevant. I think it's part of her character actually, because she's this really smart, sarcastic genius, and she knows she's being stupid. So I'm gonna defend it by saying that she did it intentionally, and so that she could segue into her next joke, because she actually makes fun of him and introduces him to these new shoes that she's built for him, and they're what do you call it? They're super noise canceling. You can't hear any footsteps. And she kind of smiles and she says, hey, you know what I call? You want to know what I call them? Huh? You want to know what I call them? Sneakers. I just spent like 3 minutes defending that joke. I wasn't bothered by a lot of the humor. A lot of people don't like it. Maybe I'm just stupid. And I enjoy silly humor like that, I guess. The CGI, the VFX are, I wouldn't call them terrible, but they're pretty bad. There's this point there's this ritual fight where Black Panther is going to be crowned king, and it's on a waterfall thing. There's this scene where the camera, from Black Panther's point of view, where he looks up and the camera pans, and there's people on the cliffside that like cheering and stuff, and it looks terrible. It took me out of the movie for a moment. Like, what the and yeah, the visual effects weren't the best. The ending I also didn't like. It was too reliant on CGI, you know. I was hoping they would do something more clever with it. These are just my first impression. It's not, you know, I only saw it once. Maybe I'm missing some stuff that I didn't pay attention to. At one point I had to go to the restroom. People are saying that it has a lot of political comment and this and that, and I can see where people would get that from, but there are actual more serious movies that aren't comic book movies or whatever, that isn't this movie. There are actual more serious movies, better movies that have tackled this in depth and in a good manner. And it kind of bothers me a little bit that this movie is getting credit for basically just touching on some of the little ideas that these better movies had. Honestly, they could have gone deep into this stuff, but I feel like Ryan Coogler, the director, he's actually a very good director. He directed Creed and what was it, something Station, Fruitvale Station, um, and he's a pretty good director. But I feel like and maybe he did want to tackle all these problems and stuff, but you you can kind of tell that the studio took him back a couple of notches, like a lot, and they held him back because he's proven to be a good director, and but you can also tell that it wasn't just the studio. You can tell that he himself wasn't very comfortable with with all this stuff. Like he's done like he did one indie film and he made a big budget boxing film, which isn't exactly a super blockbuster $200 million movie. I could forgive the action scenes being kind of weak if he had gone more in depth into that. He probably did fight for a lot of that stuff, but in the end he lost. It's Disney. The beginning I didn't like. Had me very worried. Started out very generic. The actor, I thought it was. He was fine. Black Panther as a character himself, he had a very generic arc, is what I'm trying to say. Where you didn't really feel the change. You saw it happening on paper, this, but you didn't really feel it. And talking about feeling, another thing I wanted to talk about was Wakanda itself. It's supposed to be this big, beautiful country, even though it's more of a city, and that's the thing. I never really got the sense of scope. We're supposed to be in this huge, marvelous, advanced country, this city, and I never felt the scope of it. It was mostly inside the palace that the scenes in Wakanda take place in the lab, and there are a few exterior shots, but it almost feels like they go. There's like 3 times that they're like outside in the city, and it feels like they just reuse the same street over, like those 3 times they use the same street, and it tries to establish this culture and stuff, and I just didn't feel it. Those are my first impressions. I'll probably come up with some other stuff and I'll edit it together, make it look like a mess. Thank you guys. Well, no, I don't have an audience. I'm just barely starting out, so I shouldn't say that. What can I say? Meh. Oh, for fuck's sake.